This is Chuck Gekas with Johngy's Beat, and I'm here with a good friend of mine, magician Jeff Scanlan. He's America's sports magician, and Jeff is finishing his 14th season in Milwaukee Millers Baseball Park. Jeff, how's it been?
Great. It has been absolutely fantastic working with the organization. They're probably one of the best organizations to work for.
Beautiful ballpark.
It's a beautiful ballpark. I've been here when they had County Stadium, and then they made all the changes, and now they have the first retractable roof. And it's actually, it's even better now at Miller Park than it was at County.
Now, you've been doing magic for quite some time. Tell us some of the most interesting things as far as sports related. I know you've done magic for Mike Ditka and other
I've done magic for many different sports teams. Mike Ditka, Mark Grace, the Cubs, obviously the Brewers. One of the funniest stories I think that ever happened was back in, what was it, about 19, when did the Bears, or the Bulls win? They went 72 and 10. I think that was in 96, I think it was. Yeah. What happened was that I came in from performing one evening, and I got in rather late, and so I fell asleep. And the very next morning, at about 7 o'clock in the morning, I get this phone call, and this gentleman says, "Is Jeff Scanlan there?" And I kind of, being groggy, said, "This is he." And he says, "I was calling to find out if you were booked for New Year's Eve." And I said, "I don't think so, but let me double check." So I got up, go into the office, I check, and I said, "No, it's available." He says, "Okay, I would like to hire you to come to my house and do my New Year's Eve party." And I said, "Sure, what time?" He says, "From 11 till midnight." And I said, "Okay," and got all the details and where he lived and everything else. And I said, oh, I'm sorry. I said, "By the way," I said, "who am I speaking to?" And he says, "Oh, I'm sorry, this is Scottie Pippen." So here I am talking to this guy, here I'm talking to Scottie Pippen. I didn't even realize it was him until I asked him. And he then apologized for calling so early, but the reason he was calling so early is that he was on his way over to practice. So he was on his way over to Berto Center. So that was actually pretty funny. But there was another time I was hired by Converse Shoes out of Japan, and they came into Chicago and they had an event at what used to be Rodman's down in downtown Chicago. Rodman used to have his own little bar, restaurant area down there, and he had a contract with Converse, and so Converse hired me to go down there and perform magic for a bunch of these, for a bunch of their high clients and things like that. And so Dennis was down there, and so I performed some magic for these people, and then I go upstairs and I started performing for some other people. And I'm performing at this table for a small group, and there's this one lady there, and she starts kind of flirting and joking around, and so I'm doing the typical magic stuff that I do, and joking around and back and forth. And she starts telling me how she used to be a magician's assistant, and she loves magic, and da 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 da. I said, okay. So we're having a good time. And right after I finished that, all of a sudden, a guy comes up the stairs and says, "Oh, by the way, Carmen," he says, "Dennis would like to see you downstairs." And so here I am doing magic for Carmen Electra, and I never even knew it. And she's the one, and I'm sitting there doing what I would normally do to anyone else, right. Just treat her like everyone else. And she was just sitting there going, "Oh my God." So, but there's lots of different stories like that.
Now, Jeff, I've known you for quite some time. You've got involved with making, taking bottles of unique things like a Jack Daniels bottle or a sample bottle and putting decks of cards in there, tennis balls in their completely sealed new deck order. I mean, tell us a little about that. You're one of the few people in the world doing this.
Yes, it's an art form that's called Impossible Bottles. It was made famous by Harry Eng. And Harry Eng was an educator. He was also an amateur magician, but was most famous for these bottles. And he passed away in 1996, and I was reading an article in Genie magazine, I believe it was, about his passing, and I just saw these things. And not only was I fascinated by the way his whole thought process was, because he was an incredible thinker, but when I saw these bottles, I just went, whoa, I have got to learn how these bottles are made. Unfortunately, at that time, it was a very, very rare art form, and there were less than a dozen people in the world that actually really knew how this stuff worked. So I just said, I got to learn how to do this. And so I worked at it and worked at it and worked at it. And 3.5 years later, I finally figured it all out and started making bottles with decks of cards. And then it went to soap. And then I started doing baseballs and little golf balls, ping pong balls.
All inside an opening, only much smaller though.
Yes. The average size opening is 1 inch. And I've done it as small as 3/4 of an inch, where I've put a bicycle deck of playing cards into a wine bottle.
Completely sealed pack and everything.
Still sealed with the cellophane wrapping on in perfect order. So if you were to break the bottle, you could unwrap the deck, pull the cards out, get rid of the advertisement cards, the jokers, and start playing. And that's one thing that fascinated me about the art form was not only was it so rare, but just the fact that the amount of thought that had to go in there. Plus, there are like rules to this art form. One is that all the bottles have to be perfectly ordinary. You know, bottles that you can buy off of a grocery store shelf.
Right.
2 is that the bottles cannot be cut, heated, cooled, or manipulated in any way, shape, or form.
Okay.
And then the third thing is that all the items that go into the bottles still have to be in usable condition.
Okay.
So if you had a golf ball into a bottle, which I put a golf ball into a maraschino cherry bottle, if you break that bottle, you can take that ball and go play 18 rounds of golf. In an apple cider jug, I'll put 14 tennis balls inside there. If you break the bottle, you can take the balls and go play tennis. So everything has to be usable and workable and still be in its original condition.
Well, as we wrap up, how do we find out about the bottles?
As far as if you're looking for the magic, you go to Jeff Scanlan. That's Jeff Scanlan, SCANLAN.com. That's for my magic. And then if you want to look at the bottles, you go to BottleMagic, all one word, .com.
Very good.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Jeff.
Thank you very much.